Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this IFoEC Focus episode. Today I'm joined by Coach Auge. Coach, pleasure to have you here. Let's jump right into it. Who are you, and what is your role in esports?
I'm Auge, as you said, and I'm a Brawlstars coach, so a coach for a mobile esports game. I'm 24 years old. Maybe that's also important for the coach's role, so good to know. And I'm currently working for Natus Vincere, so a team from the EECA region, since we have 8 different regions in our game. That's quite important. Maybe we will come back to this later on as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I confess I don't know much about the scene, so it would be good to hear about that as well. But I get the impression your organisation is fairly competitive. Like it plays at a pretty high level.
Yes. There's a lot of pressure, I think, with the organization that we joined. And maybe also because of the setup in our region, since there are like 2 favorites or have been 2 favorites every time that we played the monthly final to catch up points for the World Championship that is going to be in 32 days from now on, maybe a bit later when the episode is presented on YouTube and social media. The team qualified for Worlds, and also there are a lot of fans with this organization just coming up. We're looking forward to make the best result that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that. A huge social media following as well.
Okay.
So, it was interesting to see that because, like, you hear about mobile gaming being, really on the rise and hugely popular. I haven't had the opportunity to actually watch much of it. So, do you have an idea how many people watch your games?
How many people are watching the games, you mean?
Yeah, any idea?
I think there's a cup in the ECA region that was on the last weekend, and there are like 1,500 people watching it.
Right.
I think the number of teams registered for this tournament and also for the monthly finals have been always between like 350 and 500 teams. So that's already like a bunch of players, 1,500 players perhaps.
Yeah.
Even though not everybody of them is like a competitive player, but anyway, it's like a huge number also compared to other regions that play Brawlstars. And in the monthly finals, I think it's mostly between like 500 and 800 people. It really depends on who is streaming it. Since Brawlstars has 8 different regions who are all streamed at like 2 weekends in each month. So also like the casters have a difficult schedule to deal with. And I think in other regions, they're like between 2,000 and sometimes maybe 3,000 people. It depends also on the tournament. Right. For example, there's a Queso Cup who is made by Team Queso, a Spanish org. Yeah. And they really have a huge viewership. Like every time that the Queso Cup is on and they stream multiple divisions, there are so many people watching it. It's insane because you can just grab your phone and watch it and even play the game. So I mean, there's quite a connection between these links.
You even need 2 phones nowadays.
Well, yeah.
As you've brought to my attention, it's actually more common now to play on an iPad. So yeah. Perhaps we need to go back to the beginning and you can explain to me like what is a typical experience as a pro player in Brawlstars? So we're using an iPad. Are we, is it something where theoretically, could you be standing up and walking around playing, or is it something where you want to be sitting down, concentrating with the headphones on?
The most people probably start with a phone just to get into the game, when it was launched. And since there are many orgs jumping it or have been jumping it in the last year, and since also the prize pool got increased by Supercell, there have been more opportunities for the gamers, and they just invested the money, I think, that they got out of the tournaments or by their orgs, since it's sometimes a real job for those people, and bought the iPad Pro, which is like probably the most common gear for the esport players of Brawlstars, because it just gives you an easier access to dodge and see things. First of all, on a bigger screen, and also because of the 120 hertz, which make it way easier, I think, if you compare this to maybe like an old phone or just the usual iPad, to dodge and just make all those micro mechanics easier.
Right. So there might be a role for Apple in esports. Yeah.
I mean, Brawlstars and Supercell, I think they support a lot of different like iPads or I don't know how to tablets. I mean, and also phones. They're really trying to not only focus on Apple, but since Apple like it's a common brand, you know, like many people maybe can also use it for other stuff than Brawlstars.
Yeah, absolutely. If you ever see me on an iPad on the train, I'm pretty much always playing Clash of Clans. But anyway,
Oh, okay.
that's about my experience of it. So, as a coach, how did you get into your current role? Did you go through the route of being a player yourself?
Yes, I was a player myself for I think 1 year, more or less, like tier 1.5, maybe tier 2, so not too bad. We had a lot of scrims, and also two of my former teammates are like in a really big org right now. Even the name is big. So they are like on the top of the, or have been close to the top of the leaderboard of Europe. And when one of my former teammates left the team, I decided to not continue playing because I thought that I might not reach the things that I really wanted to achieve, like being one of the best players, having a really good team. And so I decided to do a tryout and maybe switch my role. And joined this Russian team, which I'm still sticking with, and have been playing with for 10 months, I think. So I joined last year in December. And it worked out like really well because like my function as a player was pretty much the same as the coach, maybe just with a lower priority. I was trying to give shot calls, trying to make thoughts about the comms, mistakes, giving feedback. But I think the main difference between like really being the coach and being a player is the connection that you have to the others while giving, for example, feedback. Because if you point out the mistakes that you had in a game and you always talk to the players just as the player yourself as well, at that time it can be really difficult to not get like biased or sound biased and to have a negative communication about the games, because somebody can say, oh, you're just pointing out my mistakes and stuff like this. So it's really difficult to deal with this situation. And as a coach, you are just in the position to really give feedback to everyone. I mean, even to yourself. That will probably always be a problem to look on your own mistakes and to improve your own role. But yeah, that's probably how I got into the coaching position. And since I'm also studying sports and quite interested in other esports games, I'm trying to learn and adapt things from other games as well.
So that's really interesting because actually we see in other esports games the coaching it's a lot of it is based around the review process. So you take a game you just played, you break it down, maybe critical situations, and sort of evaluate performance there, and then maybe set some goals for the next game. Like this plan, do, review process happens quite frequently. Is that the same in Brawlstars? Is it easy to sort of review a game and go through it and break it down?
So Brawlstars is probably related to Clash of Clans. You have different techniques and different team comps, like in more games. For example, also like League of Legends, you have those supporters, tanks, control mages, close range, long range brawlers. So there's a huge mix of heroes into this game, and it really depends on the matchup that you have, because there's a blind pick system. Like you have bans to do heroes and brawlers out of the game, but there's like then you can look on the draft that you had on the matchup, and going from there, then you can analyze the different mistakes or like things that you did good, and yeah, also like points where you can improve. I think it depends really a lot on the matchup, because yeah, it's just like the starting point, and depending on your matchup, you will have to play the game and play different every time that you're doing it. And that's probably how you do this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you look at other esports, is League of Legends sort of one where you can look to sort of get new ideas? Is that a good one? Is there a good transfer between them?
I'm mainly looking for other esports coaches, and it's really difficult to get those information because they keep their secrets just for themselves. They don't often like to share the knowledge, and yeah, you just have to like be interested in many different titles, or like just the coaches. There are different platforms that point out how they work, probably, or just for a part, and then you can always adapt. For example, I like also traditional sports like Thomas Tuchel. Maybe you know him because he's the coach of Chelsea. And he had a German podcast or like a session on YouTube where he talked about how he, or why he is a rule breaker. He calls himself a rule breaker because every time that they practice, they try something different. They never play on the same pitch as they played in the last week, and that's something that I tried to adapt, even though it didn't work out too well. For example, in Brawlstars, you have different maps that you are playing on, and even though that you will have a competition on a map pool, you can also play different maps with the same strategy. And that's something that we tried to implement in our schedule, for example.
I love that. I really, it's so interesting because I think that like pedagogy, coaching pedagogy, so how we can create situations where people learn. There's a huge amount of variation and diverse approaches out there that can be used, and I'm so interested in how they apply in esports. So watch this space. Maybe you're an innovator, you're a rule breaker yourself. Maybe you'll introduce your own way of doing it. What does a typical day look like for you? So when you're in your role as a coach?
I mean, every player and every coach has, in our team at least, a private life. So we mainly start like in the evening with esports. In a week where we have, for example, some competitions, there's then this mix of scrims to prepare competitions or work on the deficits that we had in the last week or last tournaments or whatever. And then, for example, we have like 2 scrims in a day with a small gap between the scrims so that the players can relax. And we don't really play more than 3 hours a day in this scrim setup, that we really try to do new comms or work on some macro plays or whatever. And after that, or while the games, we are always in the call, try to discuss the stuff that we did. The players talk with each other about what they did, probably also about calls, comms, and all that. And at the end of the day, we maybe go through some mistakes or some things that we like, because it's also really important to point out the positive things that you did in the scrimmages. And then there's also this part of like what only a manager, coach, or analyst does, like looking at other comms, other teams, preparing the draft, for example. Sometimes it's also like just organizing stuff, going into or looking for the next tournaments. Also, it depends on the org what you have to do. Like sometimes there's maybe commercial stuff or media days, stuff like this can always occur also in the competition week. And yeah, for example, if we have a competition, then sometimes it's only one match, sometimes it can go for 3 to 4 hours. And depending on that, we do a warm up or not, and try to like stick to each other in the voice when we are playing. And yeah, I think we just always try, or I at least always try to have the kind of same schedule. So if there's a tournament week, you try to not have like bad scrims against probably bad opponents, or like teams that you think the way you learn less. Yeah, we just try to have no real gap. And if it is a week, for example, where we had some negative results, or where I notice that the players have been playing too much, then we make planned gaps so that they really have 2 or 3 days of vacation, because you really notice when they are nervous or anxious, or when they play too much, because players are like also playing the game behind of the scrims. It's probably the same in each traditional sport or esport game, and you really have to take care of them, having enough time for like family, friends, and stuff like this, and yeah, to respect the time they need to reset, for example.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that because you mentioned how you like to have the same structure, especially before a tournament week or a competitive week. Would you plan in breaks and downtime? Is there a process where you need to ramp up the intensity as well? Like, is it a kind of game where you want to be playing quite a lot in the lead up to competition to sort of get the mechanics up? That's probably part of it, right?
Yeah, that's part of it, definitely. So, for example, you have those 8 decisive weekends where you qualify and also where you play the monthly final, and that's something where you want on the peak of your performance. And it's also the same with those major events. For example, there's the ESL, which hosts a playoff at the end of the season, and the first place can get $18,000. So that's a huge load of money, and you just want to play the best that you can and to win this match. So you will try to find a good mix of like scrimming really a lot and being on the top of your performance. But yeah, you also have to like maybe notice if something goes wrong, that you lower the pace. And it's the same with Worlds. So 16 teams from different countries and regions will start to really grind, I think, in the next 30 days to improve as much as they possibly can. Yeah, to show a really good performance.
Oh, I've actually never asked this question. I have a sort of basic outline, but how much of it is social time as well? Because like the players probably enjoy playing the game, and you mentioned that occasionally you might work on a bit of communication and stuff. Do you build in sort of social time together, downtime together? Is that a part of the program?
Sometimes, for example, after match days where you finished your placement or whatever, the players or we all stick together and watch other games in the VC. But I mean, it's also from Brawlstars, it was difficult for me to implement a different game, even though I tried it 1 or 2 times. But sometimes my players, they are Russian, so they play Counter-Strike together and spend some time together, or I don't know, they stream games. One of them is a YouTuber, so they also do that. But it's difficult since it's all online. I think other esport genres have it easier. For example, when they do a boot camp for a long time, when they have like really planned activities. I think, for example, G2 is a good example where I saw that they're playing soccer together and stuff like this. So they are really doing workouts, and yeah, they just go for walks, stuff like this. To not spend time with a game or with the game that they are competing in, and just relax and maybe build some synergy.
Love it. Yeah, keyword synergy. I think that's a word I come across often in esports, but yeah, it's clearly really important. How's your Russian, by the way?
It's very bad. I know shot calls, so sometimes I can understand what they are saying, but not all the time. So, for example, in game we have it like they are speaking Russian with each other because it's easier for them to not switch into English. And during the games, for example, when we have a draft or something, then we try to talk English. But it's hard to find a mix for real because I mean, this is my like first coaching job in this area, and yeah, it is really difficult sometimes to combine like the different levels of English and also Russian. So yeah, that is always and was always kind of a struggle. But I think with the time you learn how to master it, and sometimes you can even give like shot calls on Russian, and that can also be quite funny.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, hats off to you, because if someone had said to me my first coaching job was going to be online and in a different language, I probably would have run out the door. So yeah, I mean that's really incredible that it's not only that your approach is to sort of innovate a little bit, bring in new coaching approaches, you're also having to review and observe the players in a different language. You probably pick up a lot of the sort of emotional aspects of it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly what they're saying. That's fascinating. So what do you enjoy most about your role?
I mean, probably the success that you have in after monthly finals when you hear them like getting loud and emotional, and especially when it is a different language, then it has like some sort of spirit, you know, when they are then like really screaming and get happy when they know it's over with this game and that they just won a series versus a different team. That can be really like a good result to earn, I think.
Yeah.
But also sometimes, for example, we had a new player joining our roster, and if you see that he's making progress and that he changed the way, for example, to play in the setup with a team, then you can like even small adjustments and small improvements make you happy.
And so maybe like related question to that then, was there one moment you could say was your proudest moment? Maybe it was winning something, or maybe working with a player in a particular way. Putting you on the spot.
I think when I myself was a player, we never really had like a huge result. So like winning a monthly final back in the days in Europe, but we won one cup, like the biggest in the German-speaking region, from Germany, Austria, and Swiss. And we have been all quite happy about this, even though in the final we didn't play against the team that we expected to play against. So it was a bit easier, but that was really a cool moment. The only like bitter part of it was that we couldn't be there in person because of COVID, but that's probably something that we all have to struggle with.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. It's interesting that I think like winning is definitely enjoyable.
Yeah,
I get the sense that for many people, like winning is like the confirmation that their hard work was worth it, in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
But also with you, like I get the feeling that you're exploring quite a different side of life. You know, like you're working online with players based out in Russia and in quite a new, novel sort of competitive space. So I feel like esports is really, showing you a different side of life, which is good to hear. What is your dream future in esports?
I really want to stick to the coaching role, and I think right now I noticed that for different teams that the coaches also adapt to kind of like a manager role. So they are already like, for example, SK Gaming, where the coach is doing also the management stuff. Like usually, or many Brawlstars teams have a manager to do the schedule, and the manager is asking the players and also the coaches, so everybody from the staff, when do you have time, can we set up a scrim, this tournament is coming up, we need to practice for it and stuff like this. And I think that combining this role, like making one out of it, of management and coach, is probably like the future, at least in Brawl Stars, because you don't have this this person that like a coach can be your friend and he has a really close relationship to the players, and the manager, if he is only from the org, is somebody that judges after the result and the way that you practice. And if, at least in my experience, it was always good to have like more of the friendly relationship as a coach to the players, even though you still have to stick like to the part of being professional. And then these teams where the coach does like both managing the schedule, giving feedback on this, and knowing the process, so he can really like estimate when to do more scrims or when to do less. And then having someone in the background that just judges and maybe is not the in the closest relationship to the players and stuff, but then can like do the serious talks and stuff like this. So there's also like a mix of like the role models that are working around the team.
Yeah, good. Yeah, well said. I also actually, I think something you said there about if you're the coach, you're close to the players, you understand them and what they need. That probably helps you design the schedule, design the weekly routine.
Yes.
To make it as effective as possible. So
yes.
Yeah, watch this space then for coach/team manager Auge. Awesome. what advice? I know you're early in your coaching career, but by the sounds of it, you're going to go far. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to start coaching in Brawlstars?
Well, that's a difficult question. I think first of all, you need to watch different different teams playing the same game. Probably, like you really have to. Even when you are not at the beginner level anymore, you always have to try to see what other teams are trying out to keep up to the meta and the different play styles that they have. And also, like for example, when I am spectating different teams, I always find something new that they are trying. For example, like somebody is not wasting his ammo, trying to do less shots. They are always different positions that they try to fight for or play for around the map. And yeah, that's definitely something you can look. Yeah, you can especially have a look on. And I mean, like in the real approach of just being a good coach, it's really difficult for beginner coaches to find their own way of coaching. So maybe they have to give themselves some time and also their roster some time to learn how to work together, because in the end it's a lot of work, and you have to find your own style of like what values do you have, what rules do you have, and it's really important to stick to them once you find them.
Wise words.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you could be the next Chelsea.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, that's it for now. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I've learned an awful lot, and yeah, I also think I'll take away a lot of what you said about how to approach the game and drawing from other sources to help develop your own coaching practice. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll encourage everyone to follow you on Twitter. What's your handle at the moment?
At Auge Brawlstars, so it's the same, like Auge, just with a Brawlstars behind it.
Excellent. So everyone go follow him and watch this guy's career take off. Okay, thanks everyone. Speak to you again soon.